So the next step is basically deploying the screen. This is 1/2 inch, and basically you shouldn't use chicken wire. That stuff basically doesn't last, and the Gophers can apparently work their way through. So this stuff is a lot thicker than chicken wire, and it's just stronger because of the way the mesh is fabricated. And this is galvanized, so it will last a pretty long time. I excavated one of these other beds over there. This one was 4 years old, and someone had previously screened it with this 1/2 inch screen, and it was still looked just about as new as this screen here. So it will last at least 4 years from what I can tell. So I like to start by putting the roll at the end of the bed, and then unwinding it and letting this loose part here flap down, and then you can just roll the roll to the other end of the bed. This originally was a 100-foot spool. I would not recommend that for small projects, obviously. 8 beds this size, and I still have 50 feet left over, so if you're doing a small project, use a smaller roll, like 50 feet is typical. And this spool cost about $105 altogether. If you're doing this by yourself like I am, I strongly suggest you have some kind of weights. I'm just using these full water bottles, and you want these at the opposite end, so when you unroll the screen you can just place those on top of the screen to hold it in place. Saves a lot of time. And I forgot to mention, you should also place another couple of bottles or weights down at the bottom to hold the screen in place so it doesn't roll up. So yeah, basically this is the good start for cutting the screen and fitting it properly, because basically you have it all laid out here, and it's got good tension, so your measurements will be accurate. So the first step when you're to this stage is basically to measure out the excess mesh on all the edges on the right and the left. You want those sides to be of equal length, and on the back as well, that should be approximately the same length. Now this is kind of an interesting topology problem. As you can see here, you've got a 4x4. At least I think that's a 4x4. It could be something else, but I think that's what it is. Surrounded by these thinner boards. So you basically need to cut 2 holes in the screen to get it to fold properly, to fit nicely into the cavity. And after like 4 different configurations, I finally found a design that works pretty well. So I'm gonna cut that out now with wire snips, which I have right here. And I recommend a pair of snips like this, but something that isn't quite so corroded, because they tend to stick when you're chopping, and that can be kind of a nuisance. So yeah, lubricate your snips if they're rusty. Alright, so for the outside, you basically want to cut along these inner seams here, where the 2 boards are touching. That's basically where you want to cut the screen. So here, let me try to zoom in on this. So basically you want to snip right here and right here, and you want to move outwards along both of those seams so that you cut out a square on the outer edge of the screen. That's the first set of cuts. So this is basically how it should look when you cut it out. You got your square of screen, and you've got your square cut out right here, where the intersection point is right at the junction between all of these edges. And now the second set of cuts, you'll follow these lines once again, only you're going to cut out a profile of the top of this square. So basically you're going to have another smaller square of screen cut out. Alright, so this corner is done. As you can see, I've got the smaller cutout for the post, and then this larger cutout here. And there's the two small squares of screen. Now this last part's really easy. What you're going to do is just bend these flaps along that edge that you cut and fold them back, but not too far. I'd say like about that far, 45 degrees or so. That's all you really need, and do that on both sides. And then you want to sort of just tweak this a little along here, not too much, just kind of flex it to like prep those joints for when you fold it down. And oh yeah, this is one little thing that I forgot to mention, but because these posts tend to kind of rot out down at the bottom, I try to cut the screen as close as I can to the inner edge so it leaves these spikes sticking out, because those add a little bit of additional protection down there from the Gophers and act as a deterrent. Alright, so the other side presents a little bit of a challenge because the screen is not rolled out along the surface of the bed, so you basically just have to measure 6 inches up the side and then just cut all the way along here, being careful only to cut one layer of screen, obviously. And yeah, then you're ready to put your roll away, basically. Once you're ready to put the screen away, there's a pretty easy way to do that. Just loop a piece of wire through one of the mesh openings, and then what's the hell this function? Alright, okay. And then just tie it off on the main roll of the screen and you're ready to go. Alright, so now basically all 4 sides are done properly, and the next step is to take these sort of like tabs and fold them over at the tension point on both sides, and then just slowly work that down into the bed. If you've done your job correctly, it should basically look like this. These nice little folded over cages in each corner, and it should fit just right. And then basically the next step is to do that with the side tabs, but only about halfway. So in other words, from there to about halfway along the bed, and just basically try to work this whole end down into the corner so that all 4 edges create these nice little basket cages of mesh. So this is my favorite part right here. Once you have both these corner sections folded down into their respective creases, you've got these 2 open edges sticking out here. And basically what you do is you just wrap one edge around the corner here and bend it, and then you fold this screen over, and then you use the wire strippers to basically, or not wire strippers, but wire cutters, and you use them to bend these little edges over, and you basically create a weave, and it's like a basket, and it just holds that corner completely together, and that's going to give you nice solid protection. So if you folded those over properly, your corner basket should look just like this. That will give you a nice Gopher-proof section, even if that post rots out in the future. Alright, so once those 2 corners are done, that's when I just shovel dirt in there to hold everything in place. So I'm going to do that next. Alright, so that side's basically done, and the dirt's holding the mesh in place nicely. So you can see this problem right here where this mesh is kind of bowing out a bit. Now ideally you would just take a staple gun and push that back and staple the mesh to the board, but I don't have a staple gun, so I've got to do the slightly more labor intensive process of just pushing dirt against the edge there and packing it down until the mesh kind of conforms a little bit better to the side. That's not a big problem, you can fix that after the fact. Alright, and this is how it should basically look when you're done with the screen and you've got your first bit of dirt in, and really all that's left to do after this point is just to fill the rest of the bed in and smooth it over nicely, and then maybe later on at some point staple the screen protruding from the top edges to the sides of the bed, and you're basically done. Congratulations, and don't be discouraged if the first 2 or 3 beds you do don't turn out quite right, because like I said, it took me 5 or 6 to